Quin had his hip replaced and then decided to meet with the media yesterday. And I actually thought it was a fairly compelling season-ending press conference, far more compelling than what Justin Zanuck gave us last week. But one question that I had, and my main takeaway from Quin Snyder meeting with the media is Quin Snyder committed in the long term to being the head coach of the Utah Jazz? You hear this answer, and it makes you wonder.
Appreciate the things, that Ryan's doing. Have great respect for him and his vision for the franchise. And then, working with Justin and Danny's been great. Obviously have tremendous respect for them. So, beyond that, I think I've, continued to maintain that I'm not going to discuss my contractual situation publicly. That's just not something that that I want to do or I'm comfortable doing.
Quin Snyder, the current head coach of the Utah Jazz. By the way, as we first reported in March, Quin Snyder has 1 year left on his contract and a mutual option. So if Quin Snyder wants to be the head coach, let's get a couple of things straight. He will be the head coach because the Utah Jazz are not going to fire Quin Snyder. Sources have continued to tell us that they like Quin Snyder. They like working with Quin. They believe their roster is the issue. It is not a coaching problem. But the bigger question, Jake, in listening to that bite, I wonder, does Quin Snyder want to be the head coach of the Utah Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he still wants to be the head coach of the Utah Jazz, but I think what he's never going to do is get into the, hey, I want this or I want that or, I need this contractually or whatever. That's just not how Quin goes about it, and I can respect that. I'm certainly not criticizing him for that. I think the reality of the situation is he has 1 year left. He'll be here. I think he definitely is going to play out that contract, but as far as the future is concerned, I don't know. I mean, a year from now, many different opportunities could arise, and being that it's the last year on his deal, who knows what he's interested in or what his outlook is. I mean, he said in that presser yesterday that his family likes it here, that his kids like it here, so it seems to me that he's essentially saying that he does want to coach the team and he does want to be here, but we all know how this goes. It was like, this whole deal with the Kalani Sitake extension and that taking forever. It was like, let's go ahead and get that done. Let's lock him up. And I think it's the same thing for the Jazz with Quin. You don't want to be in the situation where you have to find another head coach because, as we said on the show yesterday and we've been saying, there's not a good replacement for Quin Snyder. He's one of the best coaches in the league. So I think he does want to be here. I just think he wants to make sure that moves are made on the roster. He's tired of coaching this particular group of guys, and he's tired of trying to figure out how to compensate for a lack of athleticism.
But it's interesting you say he's tired of coaching this group of guys. Listen to this bite here. Quin Snyder believed that this group of guys could do something special.
Processing just the fact that your season's over when, I really, really believed that, we just kind of needed a spark and we had a chance to do something special. That didn't happen. So there's, a sense of loss, in that sense.
There's a sense of loss in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, was there a message in that bite? Because when you hear Quin Snyder say that there was a loss in a sense because we felt like we could do something special with this group, he's not the most convincing guy in that statement.
We had a chance to do something special. That didn't happen. So there's, a sense of loss, in that sense.
Did you have the chance to do something special with this group?
I don't necessarily think they had a chance to do something special. I mean, I guess, if you put yourself in Quin's shoes, I understand why maybe you would believe that and why maybe you want that to be the case. But I just don't think that they were talented enough or athletic enough to keep up. And that's just the unfortunate reality of the situation. I see this whole concept or conversation running around Twitter the last couple of days about how the Jazz had the top 3 offense the last, 3 years or whatever, had the best offense the last 3 years. And the frustrating thing is, like, that's what the Jazz fan base and Jazz media and Jazz community as a whole likes to do. Oh, well, we had a great offense the last 3 years, so that means that nobody should change? No, that means that you had a decent offense, but as soon as the three didn't start to fall, then, the trials, the tribulations, the adversity, the hurdles you have to go through start to kind of rear their ugly head. And again, when you're not making your threes, and whether this isn't a game-by-game situation or throughout a series against Dallas, you can't shoot 22% against Dallas from three and think you're going to win.
Exactly right.
You just can't do it. And the real problem with that, if we're really getting down to brass tacks, is you can't put yourself in a situation from a roster standpoint where you need to shoot 40% to win a ball game because the defense in the league is too good. You have to be able to get to the line. You have to be able to effectively control the mid-range on the floor. And if you do that, then guys like Bojan Bogdanovic or anybody you want to point to who's standing wide open in the corner, then you will get that wide open look and they will most likely make those. So that's why I say it's just a flawed concept throughout. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not sitting here saying that Quin Snyder's a flawed coach for trying to coach this team and going about it the way they went about it on offense. I don't sincerely think he had another choice.
No.
I mean, with this roster, there was no other way that you were going to go. It was kind of this situation where Quinn was basically put in a situation where it was like, all right, well, you're not nearly athletic enough on the wing or on the perimeter to keep up with most teams in the league at this point. So you're going to give up quite a bit on defense. So then that means that you are going to have to stay in the game by shooting the three ball at a high rate. So whether the last 3 years, if you think about it, whether it's injuries, whether it's can't make a three, whether it's losing composure with the officiating, these things are exacerbated by all this.
But look at the Warriors win last night.
Mm-hmm.
They shot terrible. Klay Thompson, I believe, was 0 of 7 from the floor last night.
Yeah.
Like they were a brick-laying mother.
Right.
And they still found a way to win because they play smart basketball. They still found a way to win because as much as you hate Draymond Green gets a critical shot block and a rebound and sets a defensive stance higher out of the paint to keep, Jaren Jackson Jr. from scoring. Like all these high IQ plays. And oh, by the way, they made 20 and 22 free throws. Like you don't need to make threes to win games.
Right.
But I think you have to be athletic and I think you have to be smart. That was the issue with this team. So when I hear Quin Snyder talking about, we could have done something special, I don't think they could have. And so I go back to like expectations this past season, and I wonder whose expectation was it that this team was going to be special?
Because you had a chance to do something special.
Because it wasn't mine.
Yeah, and I don't think it was a lot of people.
But you hear the media in this town talking about how disappointing this season was.
Uh-huh.
You hear the fans in this town talking about how they thought this was the year. And I'm like, dude, what are you like? I just don't understand the misplaced
what were you looking
expectations, right? Because you didn't get better. You didn't get deeper. So it's specifically to Quin Snyder. The other equation here is, what if Quin Snyder quits?
Yeah.
What if? Are you the Sacramento Kings who hired a retread in Mike Brown? Are you going to go and find somebody that is unproven as an assistant coach? And, how many times are we going to talk about Sam Cassell on this show? Or does Sam Cassell move the needle in that locker room? Because I'm telling you, he doesn't.
Yeah.
To me, Quin Snyder is one of the most important acquisitions of this offseason. I think before the season tips off, you need to sign him to an extension.
Yeah.
I think you need to remake this roster. You need to remake this roster, and you need to sign Quin Snyder to a contract extension.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, having a coach who's on an expiring deal is never a good situation. But I also think that one thing that we need to be very clear about is when they move Rudy, because they will move Rudy, when that happens, there's no measurement or way to calculate how much of an impact that has on your locker room and the flow and the chemistry that these guys will have.
I would agree with that.
I think that like on the floor as an example, when in the Dallas series, Quinn was playing small ball and trying to pick up the pace, you saw a different version of Donovan Mitchell come alive. You saw a different version of the offense come alive. So my biggest question is, okay, Yeah, sure. When you move Rudy, A, what do you get back for Rudy that you can implement on the floor? But then B, and probably more importantly, how does Rudy Gobert not being in the locker room affect the chemistry and affect the conversations and affect the vibe? Because I look at like your Memphises or your Phoenixes or any of
Yeah.
these teams left in the postseason, those guys like coming to work every day. Those guys like playing with each other. Those guys operate as a unit, and this team for most of the season did not do that. So that I think is also something that they need to address.
Well, what I find interesting, again, and I just compare the Jazz to teams that are in the playoffs
Yeah.
because I think that's what you have to do. If you want to get better, I think you have to compare yourself to those that are better than you, that are doing what you want to be doing. I look at even the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks don't have great team chemistry. There's a lot of people who believe that a guy like Luka Doncic is not popular with his teammates. They wind up sending Kristaps Porzingis out. You bring in all these new guys. They're finding ways to win games.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have great spirit. I look at the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics are not a team where you're like, man, that team chemistry is off the chart. They have 3, 4, 5 guys that make an impact. And then, oh, by the way, Al Horford has a career high 30-point playoff performance last night to win them the game. Clearly, Al Horford is why they won that game.
That motherfucker don't miss.
Not
man.
last night he didn't. And that, for me, that kind of performance is what this bench doesn't have.
Yeah.
That kind of performance is what this roster doesn't have, where you get 3, 4 guys that are contributing at a high level, where you're getting the Jordan Pooles and you're getting the Gary Payton, you're getting the Al Horford, you're getting the Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunsons, Maxi Klebas of the world. You're getting guys that are maligned like a James Harden having a huge performance for the Sixers.
Yeah.
These are all things that you're seeing happening in front of you, and the Jazz just aren't capable of that. And so you can put anybody you want to be the head coach. It's not going to matter because you're trying to compete with an inferior roster.
Keep it real.
So again, not to be redundant, does Quin Snyder want to be the head coach of this team? I think that's up in the air. I think that's a question that's yet to be answered. I think Quin Snyder very intelligently is waiting to see what this roster becomes.
I want to play this bite one more time. Just to emphasize what he says here.
Appreciate the things, that Ryan's doing. Have great respect for him and his vision for the franchise. And then, working with Justin and Danny's been great. Obviously have tremendous respect for them. So, beyond that, I think I've, continued to maintain that I'm not going to discuss my contractual situation publicly. That's just not something that that I want to do or I'm comfortable doing.
Utah Jazz head coach Quin Snyder right there. I mean, and I understand there's always been an agreement between the club and the coach that they would not reveal the terms of his deal. And so I understand that. He had an opportunity to say, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Hey, yeah, this is my club. Hey, and instead he took a pass on that and he really said nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think he played the line perfectly. What I hear Quinn saying there is he likes working with those specific guys, but I also think we can take some points out of what he didn't say. To your point, like you notice you didn't hear him say, "Hey, I love this team and I love these players and they're the best thing." Like that's not what he's saying. He's saying that, "Hey, I believe in this front office, but essentially without saying it, I think this roster needs change." I mean, I know I'm surmising there and I know I'm speaking for him a bit, but when you have the opportunity to say things and you don't say them, and you're Quin Snyder, you're very cerebral, you're very intelligent, you're at the top of your profession damn near, like you know what you're doing. And so not to criticize him, but I really want to emphasize this. He didn't come out and give some glowing, statement about how great this roster is and I can't wait to be back and we're going to run it back next year. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I love working for Danny, Ryan, and Justin Zanuck, right? But I'm not going to talk about my contract. Yeah. Hey, I love working for these guys. There's change needed. If the change happens, I'm going to be here. If it doesn't, I'm probably not going to renew. That's essentially what I feel like he said there. That's my honest opinion.
I don't know. I think there is, one of the things that I think is so interesting is that there's just so little. And again, this is just my opinion. It's just my opinion. There's so little known about Quin Snyder. What do we really know about him? Oh, good coach, family man. What do you really know about him? Remember Bronco used to paddleboard across Utah Lake. What do we know about Quin Snyder?
Hey, you don't. You don't.
He's a very reclusive, private man. And I like that. And I respect that. And I think he fits in perfectly with this ball club, with this community. I just don't know that we value him enough as a city, as a town, as a state, as a fan base. I don't believe that Quin Snyder's valued enough. I really don't. And I think that the change in this roster is going to be significant. And, I think a couple of the other things that I think you really got to talk about are what guys on this roster are capable of stepping up. Because, again, I think it is imperative that this is the greatest offseason that Donovan Mitchell's ever had.
Yeah.
I think Donovan Mitchell has to come to work in September, and he has to be a much better defensive player. I think Donovan Mitchell has to come to work in September, and he has to be a much better mid-range player.
Yeah.
But I think Donovan Mitchell has to come to work in September and have a better mental game. He has to have a better physical game. This has to be a life-altering offseason for Donovan Mitchell, because now this club is built around him. And remember, I'm saying this on May 10th of 2022. This has to be a transformative offseason for Donovan Mitchell, because he is the straw that stirs the Jazz drink. From Quin Snyder to Rudy Gobert to Ryan Smith to every fan listening to this show, Donovan Mitchell is the most significant question mark surrounding this team.
Yeah.
Because if Don's gone, my guess is Quin's gone. If Rudy's gone, my guess Quin stays. If Donovan Mitchell comes back the same player that he is today, when he shows up in training camp, this team is doomed.
Yeah.
He has to improve. If the Jazz bring back Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell together, they both have to be significantly different players. They have to be. Because this team will not win with them being the same players they are. Look at this bullshit with Rudy Gobert and Shaquille O'Neal. Like this out of Rudy Gobert infuriates me.
Rudy's a great player, fine defensive player, but he offers nothing on the offensive end. Like, he has no post moves.
I think Rudy Gobert can hold you to like 12 points.
Yeah, in the first 3 minutes. in the first, let me tell you something, man. It's against my religion for somebody to hold me one-on-one. I take that personally. I do. And you know what I'm going to do with him? He's a shot blocker. He can't shoot a shot. You got to back his little skinny ass up under the rim and then show him the bow so he gets scared. Wole, and then just go up.
Wait, what was that?
Yeah. Wole, creme brulee, French fry.
Bro. Shade.
So that's Shaquille O'Neal on a podcast talking about Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
And if you're Rudy Gobert in this situation, and this is just my opinion.
Right.
If you're Rudy Gobert in this situation, you don't say a word. And this is part of the issue with Rudy Gobert. He is soft.
Yeah.
He is soft. So what did Rudy Gobert say?
I would lock his ass up.
I would lock his ass up.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy Gobert tweeted, I would lock his ass up, in reference to Shaq.
Yeah.
And I want to wrap my head around Rudy Gobert. I want to understand. And look, I get it. I know that Rudy is somebody that takes a lot of heat. You cannot tweet that. You cannot tweet, I would lock his ass up. Because I got news for you. Nobody's locking Shaq up. Nobody ever locked Shaq up. Shaq locked Shaq up. Nobody ever locked him up. He is easily, and again, I want people to understand, I covered him in the best years of his career with the Lakers, when Shaq was an LA Laker, Shaq and Kobe, the dynasty years, Phil Jackson, I was there every single day. He's by far the most dominant player I've ever seen. And I've seen Michael Jordan, I've seen Kobe Bryant, I've seen LeBron James, and nobody dominated fools the way Shaq dominated fools. With all due respect to Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
Because he's an elite defensive player in the paint. He's not locking Shaq up. He's just not. And so my question is, if you are Rudy Gobert, why are you putting yourself in the middle of this conversation?
Because I think he's prideful. I think, and again, I don't say this to try to hate on the guy, but I think we could agree that Rudy is a pretty prideful guy, whether we're talking about officiating or the Donovan Mitchell dynamic or Shaq. I mean, the guy, Rudy, is not going to let, somebody, talk a bunch of junk about him. But I agree with you. I mean, when a Hall of Famer, the greatest big of all time, if you will, like a guy on Shaq's level says something, I mean, it should be a compliment to you that he's even talking about you,
Yeah.
And that's what I think Rudy doesn't understand. So it is what it is. I mean, Rudy is just that person who can't help himself, with all due respect. And look, I love his defensive game. I love what he's capable of doing at the rim, but you're not stopping Shaquille O'Neal. It's just not. You're just not doing it.
And it is, yeah. The mentality of this team. I brought this Rudy Gobert thing up because I think it's important to talk about the mentality of this team. This is one of the major issues with this ball club.
Yeah.
Is that this team is weak mentally. And that is my one consistent knock of Quin Snyder, is that I think you have to build mental toughness into your teams. The team that stops talking to officials, the team that stops talking to the other team, the team that focuses on themselves will be the next super team in this league.
Yeah.
It's a life hack. To not give a shit what everybody else thinks is a life hack. Your life becomes so much simpler when you have a small circle of people who are important to you and you don't care what other people think.
Facts.
That makes your life so much simpler. And yet Rudy Gobert can never embrace that. He's never been able to be that guy. Donovan clearly cares what people think. And in my opinion, that's Quin Snyder's major shortcoming as a coach, is that he does not build mental toughness into their ball club. And it's one of the things I'd really love to see him adjust and do differently. I would love to see this Utah Jazz team become a mentally tough group of guys.
Yeah.
And to do that, you're going to have to change the roster, because Bojan is in this conversation as well. I mean, Bogey is just a guy that whines and complains all the time. He flops all the time on both ends of the floor. The guy that you're probably your most mentally tough player is Mike Conley, and he's just broken down at this point. Mike Conley is losing a fist fight with Father Time, who, by the way, still, to my knowledge, is undefeated.
Yeah.
In millions and millions and billions of fights. Father Time is undefeated. My point is, this team's got to get better mentally. Because basketball-wise, it's fine. If you put guys in that can shoot threes and rebound, this team's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Mentally, they're going to get beat on a regular basis. All right, let's get your thoughts in here. Talking about Quin Snyder and the Jazz. Edgar Garcia says, "What's up, players? You sons of gun casuals."
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Casual.
Leonard Donan Endelove says, "We back. What's up, my man?" The Nye Guy, good morning, dudes. What's up, Nye Guy? Good to see you, my friend. Neville93, lovely to see you as well. Good morning, people. I had a question about Quin Snyder. You think he wants to be here? I don't know if he wants to be here.
I think he does want
I
to be
think
here.
he does want to be here, as long as it's not with this roster.
Yeah, that's what I agree with that.
I think he wants to be here with a different roster. And Garcia says, "Morning, Grumpy Ashes." Okay. JJ Marsh says, "Good morning. If Quin had a better roster, the Jazz would win more." Players. Yeah, I agree, JJ.
Agree.
Totally. Nye Guy says, "I think Quin is sitting back waiting like we are for what's going to happen roster-wise." I would agree with that. Enough with the excuses that Quin didn't have the right players for his game plan. Why didn't he adjust to his players' strengths? And Garcia wants to know. Well, I mean,
What
did he not
adjustments do you
adjust?
want him to make?
Right, but did he not adjust to their strengths? Did he not take Rudy out of the paint? Did he not put Rudy in the corner to open up driving lanes for Donovan and Conley? Is it his fault that Mike Conley shoots under 35% in the paint now?
Is it his fault that the team shot 22% from 3 in the series?
I don't think it is. Like, he has put guys in. I mean, the ISO basketball that this team plays to, I think, their top end. The issue is that he waited. If you want to complain about his adjustments, I think he waited too long to pull Rudy Gobert out of the paint. I think he waited too long to play small ball. He should have been playing small ball in March and April.
Yeah.
And instead, you wind up losing to Dallas, trying to adjust on the fly, which, yeah, I agree. That's a valid criticism of Quin Snyder. He should have adjusted more quickly. If Quin quit, hey now, comment dump. Sorry, Ngarsi, I lost your other comment there. If Quin quits, bring Ingles in to coach. Stop. Nah, guys, stop. Brandon Whiteside says, what happens when the next player comes in, challenges Mitchell's lack of defense? Mitchell needs to step up. Watching that Memphis defense or Dallas defense seems like their players try to guard. Well, I mean, you're talking about apples and oranges. I think Donovan Mitchell absolutely has to be a better defender. There's no doubt about that. But you look at the thing that makes Memphis so tenacious defensively, the thing that makes Boston and Milwaukee so tenacious defensively is they have 5 guys on the floor at any given time that are athletic and really good defenders. You look at even having Al Horford on the floor. Al Horford's able to switch onto multiple players and still be a good perimeter defender. You look at Jaylen Brown playing excellent defense, banging in the paint with Giannis. You look at Memphis. You look Golden State. You look at the way that Draymond Green was able to impact that ball game last night from the center position, guarding. He's literally guarding Desmond Bane on 2 huge possessions in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And Desmond Bane has a terrible night because he saw a lot of rotations and he saw a lot of Klay Thompson. He saw a lot of Steph Curry. He saw a lot of Draymond Green. And as a team, Golden State defends really well. As a team, the Utah Jazz are not a very good defensive team. They can't rotate. You're asking Bojan Bogdanovic to cover a lot of ground because Rudy Gobert can't cover a lot of ground. Okay, well, that's one thing. But, oh, by the way, they also don't communicate at all defensively.
Yeah.
So you're comparing apples to oranges. You can't compare how good Boston is defensively to how bad the Jazz are because they don't have the same caliber of player.
Yeah, and I don't think that the belief was there as a unit. That's the thing. Like, I think one thing that gets majorly discounted or skipped is the belief as 5 guys together on the defensive end. I mean, you look at any of these teams. I mean, Bell, we've got the Warrior highlights on in the background, or you look at, like you were saying, Boston or any of these teams that are left. All these teams, to get to this point, you have to have belief in one another, and you have to have the ability to play as a unit.
And I think Golden State's a really good example of this because of how dramatically Steph Curry's made himself over. I mean, you look at the muscle that Steph Curry's added to that frame. Look at Andrew Wiggins. Watching that game, staying up far too late last night, Andrew Wiggins is now a wanting, willing 3-point defender. Mm-hmm. It is so much more than what you're being taught. You have to want to. You have to have, like, the biggest issue for Donovan Mitchell is he just has terrible footwork. But he also is not a confident defender.
Yeah.
And I look at guys like Bojan Bogdanovic. He's just not physically capable.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Like, okay, Bojan's not physically capable. Donovan Mitchell doesn't have the tools. He is physically capable, but it's almost like, hey, we've got to put the sway bar in place to connect to the strut and the shock and the stabilizer.
Put it all together and stuff.
Like all the parts are there. He doesn't have the tools to attach all the parts yet.
Yeah, he doesn't have a wrench.
So he's got to put that together. And in this league, development largely has gone from a team game to an individual game. You really have to have productive summers. You have to get better on your own. So I think this is a very, very, very big summer for Donovan Mitchell. I can only say that so many times. James Knight says pure speculation. So let me get this straight. He loves working for the guys that played a role in the roster he's not happy with. Not at all. I think this roster is largely Dennis Lindsey's roster.
Yeah.
I think that they could have made changes at the trade deadline that would have satiated Quinn, but they chose not to do that because I think Danny Ainge knows what we've said for a long time, that foundational changes happen in the summer. Rarely do they happen with James Harden at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Those kind of trades are very rare for a reason. So I don't think Justin Zanuck's at fault. I think the issue is that you're looking at a situation where Quin Snyder does have a roster that I just don't think, frankly, I don't think that you have the pieces. It's interesting. One of the interesting things that happens is that people message me in vanishing mode, and I can never get there fast enough. I can never get there fast enough.
Right.
But I think what this one person in particular in vanishing mode was trying to tell me was that Quin Snyder wants to be here, but the circumstances right now are preventing him from committing long-term to this team.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest question marks, and I think one of the questions around the NBA, what is Danny Ainge doing? How involved is Danny Ainge? And who's the one guy we have not heard from?
Ryan Smith.
No, Danny Ainge. Has anybody seen a Danny Ainge interview? Has anybody seen a Danny Ainge press conference? Because I've seen Zanuck and I've seen Quinn. I have not seen Danny Ainge. I have not heard from Danny Ainge. I think that needs to happen. It needs to happen. We need to know how are your hands on the wheel here, bud, or what are we doing? It's very interesting how quiet Danny Ainge has been.
Yeah, I think that was part of the agreement of him working for them, though. I don't think that he wants to deal with the media or any of that.
Well, you can want not to deal with the media. The media is part of this gig, unless you're in Salt Lake City, and then, don't get me started. Anyway, the point is the media is part of this gig. It absolutely is. Gabe Leather says, Monty, show number 711, Slurpees for everyone. Thank you. James Knight says, Shaq is a big mouth. Has been. You've had your time in the sun, Shaq. Go away. But here's the problem. He's the best center in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
And he is, by most people's account, the most dominant player in the history of the NBA. Like, I don't think he has to go away. I really don't. Ryan Buckley says, morning, guys. Shaq isn't wrong about Gobert, though. Truth. Jeremy Bolton, my man, what's up? And stop talking about, you know what, Jeremy? God, fucking... Alex Caruso is not a marijuana addict. He smokes for therapeutic reasons. His knee hurts.
Sometimes, okay, maybe.
Jeremy Bolton says, I love Rudy, but Shaq would look to send Rudy into the shadow realm.
The shadow realm.
Exactly. If they played each other in their prime. Thank you. Thank you. Giggity says Shaq would make Judy his bitch. Judy.
Wow.
Giggity, good morning. Brandon Whiteside says, Tag shut Shaq down till Shaq punched him in the face. Who's Tag?
I don't understand that.
I don't understand that either. Shaq and Draymond are the ones stirring the pot. Don't disagree with that. Because Rudy is the first player to react to tweets. Come on, stop it. No, it's not that Rudy's the first player.
How do you miss this concept? Who said that?
James Knight.
How do you miss this concept? With
First
all due
of all,
respect, James.
wait. Where's my beer?
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
He ain't going to send beer. He ain't doing it,
Second of all, I agree with you. It's not that he replied to a tweet. It's that you're Rudy Gobert. You got to stay above that. You got to stay. There's no reason. What good when you are Rudy Gobert and you've had the worst 2 years of your career.
Yeah.
And you've had just horrendous moments. And you just signed a contract that universally everybody says is a joke. Arguably, yesterday I was listening to a podcast that said that Rudy Gobert and Russell Westbrook are competing for the worst contracts in the NBA.
This man was a bona fide scrub.
And you're going to say that you would lock up Shaquille O'Neal. You would lock his ass up. It's just not a good thing
Instead,
to do.
What you should have done is you should have said, "I appreciate you talking about me, Shaq. Thank you.
Thanks for keeping my name in the spotlight. Really appreciate that." And what he should have said is, Shaq's a great player. I have a lot of respect for him. And just that he's even mentioning me in comment, like, be sarcastic about it in the other direction.
Troll him.
The other direction.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's not that difficult. By the way, my biceps are so incredibly sore. Like, working out sucks. Don't do
What
it.
do you bench?
Don't do it. 225. Shaq and Draymond are the ones stirring the pot. Yes. Arich Tavera says Rudy with his defensive player of the year skill, including all his BS in and out court, and Jazz and teammates are okay as long as his contract is around $24 million a year.
Correct.
You know, the problem is,
Are we clear on that?
You know, it's 41. John Jackson says, yeah, we expect more from Rudy. Night Guy says, you Gobert fans are up at night. Up in the night? Did you watch the same games I did? Who did he lock down this year? Seriously, that's the problem. That's the problem. There's not post-game and stuff. Big Dog O-Town, what's up, my man? Shout out to Mo Bamba. I really don't think a lot of these Jazz fans understand the importance of athleticism when it comes to the NBA game. It's not church ball and the different wards competing with each other.
Shout out to Mo Bamba.
Wow. Correct. It's not church ball. Danny Ainge will talk at the completion of the playoffs, James Knight says. I hope so. Erich Tavera says the reason Ainge is quiet is because he's stuck in a mess left by Dennis. Even he is speechless. That's probably true. Ryan Buckley says 85% of NBA players smoke weed. They do.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Ostertag. Shaq punched him in the face in a shooting facility because Tag was shutting him down. No, I totally disagree with that. So I talked to Greg Ostertag about this during his time in Sacramento. And the one of the more enjoyable guys to deal with was Greg Ostertag. And I don't remember the exact details of it. This was some time ago now. But talking to Greg Ostertag about the dominance of the center position, Tag knew that was coming to an end. Greg Ostertag was well aware of who he was as a player. And I think the thing I loved about Greg Ostertag is he never took himself too seriously. He got dominated at times.
Yeah.
He got dominated at times. And I do think that Shaq and Greg Ostertag had their moments. There's no doubt about that. Oh yeah, there is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You know, like he's one of those guys. I saw Greg Ostertag buying a ladder at Home Depot. Kind of really random. Haha, Jackson Graham says. What the fuck? Shaq doesn't buy ladders at Home Depot. Greg Ostertag does.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Like, so to me, I just think that it's what when you look at the Shaq versus Ostertag, you know, the slap of Greg Ostertag, was amazing. Like it was
never would be allowed in today's game. But back then it was amazing.
No, and I'm pulling up the video of that because I haven't seen this video. Have you ever seen this video, Jake?
I think I have, yeah.
It is a fairly remarkable moment in time, right? And when you look at the way that Shaq handled stuff, yes, it was 1999. That's right. Like the Shaq Ostertag stuff was amazing. And you look at the way that
yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, it's
wild.
It is wild. It is.
But that's what I'm saying. Like Rudy, with all due respect to Rudy, you and nobody else is going to stop, Los Angeles Lakers Shaquille O'Neal.
Because he had a hook shot and he could shoot it a little bit and he had a bank shot and it was.
And he was more of a brute than you were. Like he was going to out physical you every single night, man. And that's just what it is.
Yeah. Oh my God. I forgot Dennis Rodman was on that 1999 Laker team. What a disaster that was.
Look at in these videos. You go on YouTube and search this, like Shaq and Ostertag. Look it up. Dude, you have their entire defense collapsing on Shaq, and he's still getting to the rim.
Yeah, you have four guys playing Shaquille O'Neal. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
It
like
is.
This for Rudy, it has nothing to do with just replying to the tweet. You had an opportunity to positively troll Shaq.
Yeah.
And you didn't do it.
Yeah. And it's pretty amazing the ability that Shaq has, even on bad shooting nights. And I mean, it's remarkable.
Because he can just go through you. That's the thing. That's what makes him the best big. He can just outpower you.
Yeah, because he dips that shoulder. Everybody remembers Shaq. Like, you put that shoulder down, and I mean, it's pretty amazing.
And he had great footwork.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that Ostertag competed. Greg Ostertag enjoyed Shaquille O'Neal. He enjoyed competing against Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
He enjoyed their battles, and Shaq had his moments.
Yeah.
Shaq is good. The thing is, there's no shame in getting dunked on by Shaquille O'Neal.
But that's what guys like Rudy don't understand.
There's just no shame in it. And so anyway, we could go on and on. Look at Ty Lue's jump shot.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me.
You're
not that guy.
Right? Like, so I don't know, man. I just think that we get so caught up in who's better than who, and like, I just don't think you don't need to go against a guy like Shaquille O'Neal in the public spotlight when you're making $41 million a year and you're struggling, and you're part of the reason that the Jazz are struggling. Yeah. Man, Shaq was hitting fadeaway hook shots.
Yeah, dude. Yes.
Like, you forget how good Shaq was. Like, if you watch what he did.
Yeah, dude, he owned people.
It's unbelievable.
Unstoppable, bro.
Unbelievable what he was able. Like, I haven't watched Shaq highlights in.
Yeah, dude.
I mean, years.
Yeah.
But to watch the way that he dominated in the paint.
Yeah.
To watch the way that him and Ostertag battled each other is crazy.
Yeah.
And that Shaq and Kobe were on the same team
is wild.
Is ridiculous. Dude. Like, what are you supposed to do with that?
Y'all want to play.
What are you supposed to do with that,
man?
You're
supposed to lose. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think you are. It's crazy that happened. I just don't know, like, what you are supposed to do with that.
Nothing.
I really don't.
So there you go.
Anyway, just watching the Shaq. Go watch Shaq highlights. If you haven't watched Shaq highlights, go watch Shaq highlights.